Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are in the world. My name is Leachko. Welcome back to the podcast.
I'm Ellie Spearman. I'm a graphic designer at Retail Without Boundaries, and we're back here with another episode of the Retail Lounge. And for those of you who've been following us since the beginning, you're going to see a returning guest here with us today, as long as with an additional special guest.
Yeah, so we have Jose DeCabo. He's on from the RWB team. And an extra special guest, Mike Budzisz. He's the VP of visual merchandising at Dick's Sporting Goods. And we've known him for a while. And Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be on.
Yeah. So, Mike, if you could share a little bit more detail into your background. And then also, we were curious to hear, starting off, the trajectory of DSG, where we think the company's going. And then, of course, highlight into this really interesting topic about collaboration and collab spaces in store.
Perfect. Absolutely. So in terms of my background, I went to art school, and what do you do with an art degree or a degree in painting and printmaking? You go into retail, just like everybody else. I won't go into too much background, but did a little graphic design, did a little illustration, some fine art, worked at Home Depot for about 11 years in visual merchandising. So that's where I really, I think, caught the bug for in-store environment and design of retail spaces. I got to meet and work with some amazing agency partners, some fabrication partners, printers, and really enjoyed like all of that time. From there, my wife and I opened up an art gallery. That was fun. You know, it's something we always wanted to do, but once you open up a gallery, you realize why people don't really open up galleries. It's a ton of work. It really is. I didn't really stay too far away from the retail scene. I did a lot of consulting with some agencies, got to work on some pretty cool projects. And then I got a call one day. I kept in connection with one of my former teammates and bosses, probably my favorite boss I've ever had, Tony Roller. And she had taken on the signage business for Dick's Sporting Goods and asked if I'd ever come back onto the retail side. And this is kind of funny to me because I remember telling her probably 6 months before, I'll never work for anyone ever again. I love being my own boss. And then when she called, she was like, well, you know, you're kind of the exception. So I took that challenge about 5 years ago, haven't regretted it. And since then, and this will be a great segue into the second part of your question, is what's the trajectory or the growth of Dick's Sporting Goods? And I think it's nothing but good news right now. And mainly because we launched a concept called House of Sport. House of Sport is much different than the Dick's Sporting Goods you might know or remember, shopping. It is very much an experience destination, different than anything else that we've designed before.
Yeah.
There is, it's generally about 120,000 square feet. It has things like a climbing wall in it. It's got hitting bays in golf. It's got a batting cage, and it has some of the best merchandising that you'll find anywhere in the industry. And it's a lot of fun. And you mentioned collaborative spaces, or what we shorthand call collab spaces. Mm-hmm. Those are these activation zones. And when I say activation, I really mean they're spaces inside of a store that are different than the home location of a category. So if you're talking about apparel could live, on the main floor. And if we did a collab, it would be in a space reserved for these special designs where we'd work with the national brand or one of our emerging brands or brands we bring into the store and make something very unique and very special that you can't really find anywhere else in the market.
Interesting. So when it comes to finding those right partners, how do you guys go about that? Are you looking at trends more or less in the industry itself? Do you kind of have them calendared out for the year in a way?
Yeah, this is one of the most fascinating things about on the inside, and this is similar for other retailers, is once you kind of capture lightning in a bottle, you quickly try to build a process around it, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of test a lot of things, then you find something that works, and then you're like, ooh, we got to scale it. And so when you get to that point where you have to scale, you get a lot of excitement from our national brand partners, even internal, because we have vertical brands, which are really private label brands that we develop, we nurture and we provide out there to our athletes. Our athletes are our customers. That's just kind of how we refer to them. And when we build the process, we start looking at exactly what you said. We need a calendar, right?
Yep.
Right.
We need to quickly define how long do these last? What are we looking for in terms of product? And I don't want to say it's a mixed bag, but they do come to us in different ways. Sometimes brands go into a store, they see kind of the amazing display that's in there and they go, I want that too. And so they'll reach out to their buyer, their SVP of merchandising, and say, how do we get into the collab? How do we get into the seasonal fashion show? And I mentioned that one too, because it's one of the other big programmable spaces that we have in the store. The seasonal fashion show is this beautiful presentation of product right as you come into the store that is bookended by two large digital displays. It has good square footage, great visibility, great sight lines. So those two areas, the collab space and the seasonal fashion show, are the ones that we get the most interest in. So brands will work with us up front. They'll pitch ideas. We do have some really talented folks on the team that have calendarized the space. Each one has a different length or duration. We look for different things based on the season. So like if it's really getting into run month, we don't really want to go after, let's say, stuff you might find for back to school. We want to focus on run. And then what's unique about that? We don't want to take product that's just somewhere in its home location and relocate it into the collab. We want something new, different, plus something that isn't just captured in their normal buy for that category.
That's intriguing. So I'm curious then, since House of Sport and DSG primarily also focuses a lot on vertical brands as well. When we're talking about the dynamic between a collab space and a vertical space, something that's obviously more year-round in retrospect, where does that conversation start to unravel when we're talking about impact of scale, right? Where's the delegation between what is and is not being produced in the collab space? What is the quantity, aside from just obviously what's relevant, particularly for the season? What does that conversation look like with brands?
Yeah, like most retail, and I'll just use very generic terms because I don't want to go too far into actually how we apply strategy into the process of doing buys.
Right.
But in general, what we'll do is a sort for a category and then translate that into the space. And so you'll have an initial review of product that's out there that we can buy, whether that is product that is developed by our internal team in terms of a vertical brand, and that's common in retail as well. And then also what our national brand partners are offering. And then we go, you know what? We're pretty good at curating. We know a lot about our athlete. We know what they really love about our brand. These products will work really well for us in these home locations. At the same time, we might see something that is proposed and say, wow, that would make a great activation. That is perfect for the seasonal fashion show. That is perfect for the collab. And then it gets onto the radar. And then eventually what we say is, okay, great. We'll put it into these 20 doors. That buy is very different than as if we bought it for all, 742 of our, Dick's Sporting Goods stores. So that's where that difference lies. And there's some really smart individuals other than myself that actually plan these buys out to make sure that, we're doing the right thing for the athlete in the store.
Interesting. So one of our podcasts, we talked about making these three buckets of people happy. So you've got the vendor themselves, the brand, then you have the retail space, and then you have the design group as well. And how do you make all these teams happy to come together? So do you face any challenges on the collaboration part?
I was hoping you had the answer. I say that jokingly because I have never in my career worked with as many talented people, whether it's internally or with our agencies, as I have at Dick's Sporting Goods. I think one of the things that helps us succeed is our tolerance for trying things new and trying to find things that haven't been done before, or at least not in the way that we do them. And so that gives us a lot of leeway, and I think probably grace when we design things so that we know that didn't really come across, but that's okay. We learned something from it. And to go into those three buckets. So one, you had mentioned that athlete, or no, the brand, right?
Yep.
How do we keep the brands happy or take their feedback?
Right.
We try to impress them, honestly. We try to be the best at what we do so that when they look at us, they say, that's the group we want to go with. Because you could go into any big box with a major brand and probably get space on a floor and do fine. Or do you want to be with a retailer that's going to actually try to infuse what they love about their brand, what they love about your brand, and then make it come to life in a way that you're not going to find anywhere else. Mm-hmm. So that's like the ambition. Is it 100%? No, I'd say we're high 90s. If and I'm speaking mostly around the house of sport, especially around programmable spaces, because it is something unique that we've started to build. The space, you mentioned space, correct?
Yeah, so just the collaboration between the actual like Dick's Sporting Goods space and then how it makes you guys happy, because they're, the brand's going to want a lot of things in there. And to your point, you were trying to guide them into the space and say, this works better than what you really want in it.
Yeah, we, as a business, we want things to perform well.
Yep.
And that performing well could come in many different ways. I mean, you have the very easy metric of sales performance. Then there's the other of just athletes enjoy the space, athletes enjoy the experience of the product, because some of the brands we get to partner with are very thoughtful about not just making it a shop in a shop. They want to do a fun run or a 5K along with it. They want to do classes along with it. They want to do a customization experience with it. They want to teach you about the product. So we're very lucky in that way too, because we get a lot of engagement past just product and design.
Yeah.
You also mentioned internal design team, correct?
Yeah, and I also misspoke a little bit too on the third bucket would be usually the customer and how you make them happy as well. Because obviously Dick's Sporting Goods has found the secret sauce to entertain people on the inside of a house of sports. So
right.
Obviously you're not going to divulge that and give it away, but you got to keep the customer happy as well. So I'm curious on the challenges on your ever collaborating with them as well. So they stay entertained, they come back.
Yeah, it's not that it's hard to answer this, but I'm going to answer it in a way that may seem just too loose. And that is, I feel like if we design something great, and I don't want to make that to sound like it's bigger or more important than it is, but if we do something that we feel is really good quality work between our national brand partner or our brand partner, our agency and fabricator, and our store teams, then I feel like it's a unique expression of who we are. And to us, that's how we aim for it. We always want to give the athlete something new and something to look forward to. And I know it's anecdotal, but we will sometimes hear as we're doing store trips that our executive directors in our house of sport will get feedback from customers, from athletes, that they always look at these spaces like, oh, what's new inside of Collab? What's new in seasonal fashion show? So we've already been able to train ourselves and our athletes that there's something new. We're always doing something new in spaces in the store. And to us, I feel like that is going to give us longevity in terms of relevancy. Because there's nothing more, I don't want to say depressing, but there's nothing more unappealing, I think, in walking into retail spaces and things don't change.
Yeah,
and
right.
I get it if it's a month or 2 months or 3 months, but if you go 6 months and that experience is the same, what really drives you there besides convenience? So
yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So what big of a role does innovation play in your space? Because I used to remember looking at shoes, running shoes, and it was more like, hey, what do they look like? But there's so much technology even behind a running shoe today. I've seen so many documentaries how much time Nike and Adidas spend on the running shoe.
I have to tell you, like, there's nothing more humbling than visiting some of our national brand partners and seeing how serious and how passionate they are around that technology, and then what they do to kind of put the data and the research behind it, it is remarkable. Some of the brands do an amazing job also just with the aesthetics of their facilities and locations. So
Right.
it's all extremely impressive. All extremely impressive.
To Jose's point, when and then to your point as well, is when these national brands put so much energy into it, do you guys sometimes not get nervous, but do you come in feeling like you really have to celebrate the new technology and that piece of equipment that they're selling? You're trying to push that with even innovative technology, so the experience in the store tells the story properly to a customer. So are you guys always trying to bounce off of what the technology is? Are they coming to you with a lot of those ideas?
In my experience, there's a lot of desire to say everything. And what we have to do or help with is what will cut through and then what becomes noise. At the end of the day, the product or the experience is the hero. And sometimes we can talk to ourselves. And that's across the board. And helping curate that space and say, you know what, there is something about this product that really needs to talk about its technical aspects or features and benefits. We will either position it in a location to help do that. Maybe we'll add some graphic into it that helps explain it. But at the end of the day, what we have to do, especially as our new prototypes start to roll out, in greater velocity and quantity, is we have to get it so that it's not overwhelming. Because we have a belief that product is the hero, and it is what is really driving people to come in and kind of find what they want. Now, it's the old philosophy of like first orient them, is it sky, why, and buy, getting them to that space. And then as they're trying to make a decision between two products, really help them there. Like when you mentioned footwear, in our footwear decks that we have in store, especially our premium decks, which we have majority of our stores have the premium decks. We very minimal signage, like very minimal, and we do it discreetly. We will talk about the technical aspects so that that it's high cushion. It's meant for the following applications. This is enthusiast. This is recreational. But we also are very, very aware of positioning product based off of athlete preference. We don't do things like we don't slot product. We don't say these brands always get this. We follow the trend or follow where the market is taking us, and just making sure that we're not trying to put our thumb on the scale, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's
No, that makes sense. It's like data driven, by customers. So yeah, that makes sense. You wanna take it where the customer wants to go. In your case, the athletes.
Yeah, data driven by customer, definitely. And also just constantly keeping ahead of that race, which is focusing on the challenge of rinse and repeat in a retail space, right? And I mean, especially also with advancing technology, whether it is a particular collab experience for one primary brand, right? And what's being shown in stores, then we're talking about how we're competing with e-commerce, right? And online. So whatever product is being sold digitally and expressed through that way, and what's encouraging people to walk inside of a space, which obviously DSG is doing with House of Sport.
So
Yeah,
to
to piggyback on what you were mentioning, because it reminds me of how even though we are very much a brick and mortar retailer, our .com, our mobile experience, we pay a lot of attention to that as well.
Right.
But at the end of the day, yes, we do want to make a shopping experience that is both memorable and meaningful for the athlete.
Are you guys, the collab spaces through a lot of these brands pushed you guys to help reimagine those spaces from their perspective? Are you always looking to see how do you convert people on an omni-channel, essentially from when they see it, they come in, and you can even get them online? So you guys innovating, try new things, go into the labs, testing them out amongst the public?
I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah.
A lot of times, and here's I don't want to say it's a trick. The way to approach relationships with brands is to understand who they are and understand who we are, and either find that common ground or understand what's equitable. And we're lucky. So we'll have some national brands that have a very strong point of view. They definitely want to move in a certain direction, and it just happens to align with it. Yep, this is great. This is something we should definitely do. And different groups will get together, like let's say it's their global marketing team, our marketing team, to help support it. We've got very talented individuals just passed on the in-store and design side that help round out what you're talking about, whether it's that omni experience, making sure that we haven't lost an opportunity to connect the channels. So, and again, I would say it's different by, like, no collab that we've done is the same. No brand relationship we have is the same. They all approach their product and their story differently, which again makes this really exciting for us as designers, because we get to do something new every single time, which again, a lot better than trying to just rinse and repeat, as you had mentioned before.
Right, definitely. So I'm curious then, Mike, we've talked about customer experience and the brand relationship of what is and is not presented in these spaces. When we're talking about execution, we've come up with what that space is going to look like, what products are being shown. Now we're talking vendor relationships and fabrication, right? What does that execution storyline look like?
So the execution storyline, so once the creative comes in, you're usually wowed, right?
Right.
It takes a few rounds, right? You're wowed, and then you're like, okay, well, now I got to pull this off for a set amount of money, right? Everything has a budget, everything has a timeline, and that's where some of that science or that engineering comes in, of how do we get this vision to come to life and how do we fabricate it? So that's when we kind of crack open the portfolio of fabricators that we have. We try to pick someone that can both deliver on time, scope, and budget. When I said both, I meant three. So all three of those: time, scope, and budget. Sometimes we have to, go through a few different vendors, only because, it could be capacity. We're opening a lot of stores. We're doing other shop designs. However, we're lucky. We've been able to find some really good fabricators, some really good printers, some really good install crews, and pull these off in a timely manner. So yeah, we typically consider the concept first, then consider which agency or fabricator fits the mold for executing that scope.
Yeah, because I guess when you're... Go ahead, Jose.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you're fine.
I was just going to add to what Mike is saying, the importance, Mike and I work together, obviously, at Home Depot, and I couldn't tell you guys how important it was to have a good vendor and a good agency. I mean, I don't think we could have done what we've done, when I was back then. Now I'm on the other side, which is interesting, but I don't think I could have done it without agency support and vendor partners. They're an integral part of the retailer world, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you're trying to make a personal experience and personalize that experience to your athletes. So you have to have a personal experience with your vendors at the same time, and the fabricators, to make sure that your idea doesn't get missed all the way at the end. So when you do that, are you literally on the ground with them all the time, kind of tied? Your team is tied, or do you trust a lot of them that they're going to bring your vision to life? They kind of know who you are and how you guys act and respond to things?
It's more the second. I started my career more on the first, where I felt like I had to be hands-on all the time.
Interesting.
I had to be over people's shoulders, and it takes a while, because no one starts their career and ends their career typically doing the exact same thing. And when I started, I was making a lot of things and being very prescriptive on, here's exactly what I want. I want it made out of this, and I want it to have this, product right next to it. Then getting more into the overarching creative direction. And now I've got a team that actually does amazing ideation along with our agency partners. And I actually just kind of get to sit back and enjoy presentations of great concepts and just kind of get to pick one direction, and then make sure that our stakeholders and the others involved, are aligned. And so it's a much different place now. I would say we're closer to that second option that you had, which is we kind of trust and we know they're going to execute to that quality. Now, that doesn't happen overnight. A lot of times, especially if it's a new agency or fabricator, it takes a little while to learn the brand.
Yeah.
It's not just the brand's personality or what it's like to work with them, but it's also some of the operational mechanics that go on too. Who do I need to talk to? Who do I need to check in with? Who is responsible for this piece of the business for the company? Who's responsible for this piece over here, right? And it can be very different groups too, that ones that don't necessarily even connect. So it's great finding an agency that can be dynamic that way, that understands that, look, at the end of the day, I'm doing this on behalf of this brand in this store, this retailer, and I need to execute to this degree. And that doesn't happen overnight, but luckily we've been able to forge those relationships and kind of grow into them.
So on the brick and mortar part of this, and to kind of round off maybe a couple more questions here, where do you guys see DSG going for 2025, 2026? Is there a main overall vision and goal that the entire DSG community has on them? I don't know how much you're able to divulge, but I know you guys have a North Star you're going to.
I would say listen to the earnings calls. I think Lauren and Navdeep do an amazing job of being able to lay out what the future looks like for us. House of Sport is definitely one of the most pinnacle expressions we have, or the pinnacle expression of Dick's Sporting Goods. And it, in a lot of ways, is going to be what we continue to roll out. You'll also hear the leadership team talk about the redesigned 50,000 square foot prototype. That is essentially what you have most out in the market today, which are those, one level stores, very easy to navigate, very classic, but those will have some of the brand identity. When I say brand, it's more the space, more that environmental identity that House of Sport has. Doesn't mean they're the same, right? Doesn't mean it's the exact same athlete experience in terms of, community engagement, experiences inside the store, but it will feel contemporary the same way that House of Sport feels contemporary. Will you see some things that, if you walk into one and you walk into the other, go, oh, they feel like they're the same. One's just bigger. There's a lot of nuances, and you have to, I think, work with us to understand like how big the differences are. But that's also something else that we'll talk about. Not we, but Lauren and Navdeep will talk about on the earnings calls. Just how excited we are to start getting these new concepts at scale. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're a growth company. We are building, remodeling, relocating stores. So we're excited. I mean, there's no shortage of work for us or account vendors that we partner with.
And I know too that, brick and mortar was in question for a while during COVID. People moved their businesses around the way they're kind of working with how the market is. And you just mentioned it, that you guys are switching places, moving things around. Is that all due to how the market reacts? Because I know you guys are heavy brick and mortar. You're all about experiential inside the store space. So when you make these decisions, are you looking a few years out to see where things are going? Because I know you guys are trying to stay ahead of everyone else, and you are. So I'm just curious on what that looks like when you guys look out for trajectory.
Mm.
Yeah, again, for what I do with the company, my exposure to some of the research and the strategy is done by a separate team. So we have a very talented strategy team that looks at where is Dick's Sporting Goods going into the future, how do things need to change. We have very good data with our scorecard members. So we know that basic demographics, and what that really means to assortment. So yeah, people much smarter than me are making sure that we're prepared for the future. My role greatly is just around, are we ready to scale at the speed that we're going to scale?
Mm.
Okay. And I would think the last question is, where do you see retail going in the future? You personally?
Yeah, just at large.
Like the trends that are going on.
If you look back 20 years, Jose, it's much easier for you and me to look 20 years. But do you remember, like, big box? It almost looked like the words "big box," right?
Right.
Easy, just stick up 4 walls, put some Logier in there, you got yourself a business. And now, what excites me most is how much ideation goes on to making new and unique And I actually think retail has a very bright future. I don't think it's going to be unrecognizable. I just think the quality and kind of the catering to whether it's nuance or purpose, and that's what I'm really excited about too, because more purpose-based retail is probably needed. We're very proud of Sports Matter, which is helping keep youths engaged in sport. Too many people drop out of it. There's so many benefits, not only just the exercise, but learning to be part of a team that go on and foster, stronger leaders in the future, stronger teammates in the future. So, yeah, that's kind of what I'm excited for in retail. Now, the changes, I think there's probably lag depending on the area of the retail supply chain you're looking at. So on the non-merch side, there's probably a lot of consolidation that happens with larger fabricators and printers, and there's vertical integration. So there's improving the operational structure to lower cost, improve profit, be able to scale, grow, and sustain. But then there's also some great agency and retail design work that's going on, where it's revitalizing spaces that are kind of like long forgotten, integration of new technology and new ways to shop, new kind of on the cusp trends, whether that has to do with the environment itself and what does it really mean to be in a retail space and redefine it so it's not so just product on shelf centric.
Yeah.
So I think there's like a lot that we can kind of see like through a haze, kind of directionally where things going. Backwards is always easier, and I don't see those two things looking like one another, even in the next 3 to 5 years.
Interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
yeah,
awesome.
I think that was well said. I think retail it's got a bright future. And to your point, I think it's a matter of the retailers that choose to evolve and innovate. Those are the ones that will keep going and will be around. I mean, there's a lot of retailers that didn't do that and they're no longer around. So I think that's important. And I see that, I tell that everybody. My daughter is an example of how she shops, and it's amazing what a Gen Z, how they shop. They shop totally different than the way I shop. And I would say retail is still very healthy. It has a healthy future.
Yeah. And
based on that.
Have you noticed even like what is it called? Me search? Like
Yeah.
if you got that anecdotal data point of one. But do you notice like any desire to kind of go back almost to like older media or like a fascination with older media with your daughter? Like,
she's a good mix of a Gen X and a Gen Z.
Oh,
She's
really?
she's the kind of girl that she likes to shop online. She spends a lot of time online, like most kids. I mean, she's 20. She's not a kid anymore. She's in college, but she likes to go to the store. Now, the interesting thing is sometimes she'll go to the store, play with it, look at it, and then come back home and buy it from online.
Yeah.
It's an interesting phenomenon. And I will be like telling her, it's like, why didn't you just buy it? We were at the store. She's like, yeah, but I like to see it. I like to play with it. I would like to, the experience. And then she goes home and buys it online. So, and I think that's a trend that I've seen a lot with younger people, that they're like kind of going back to I want to feel it, touch it, see it, and then I'll still buy it online. It's interesting.
It is. And the reason I bring it up, my daughters are very interested in things from the 90s and 80s, and I find that fascinating because I have a little nostalgia, right? But they actually want the product from then too, right? And I don't watch a lot of YouTube, but they do, so by default I do as well. And watching people unbox like 40
Oh man,
70s, I'm like, what is going on? There's nothing like seeing Castle Grayskull, from your childhood show up on somebody's channel.
Well, one of the things that my daughter is, anecdotal, but it's the same thing. She likes Polaroids, right? So she has a Polaroid camera, and she likes the old style, and she has them, on the wall and that kind of thing. So yeah, it is. I think they do go back and look at some of the old stuff that is kind of cool again. I think we probably did that too, growing up. We probably looked at some of the stuff my parents had and we're like, wow, that's kind of cool. But
sure,
it was old.
Sure. I just recently been to a conference, and there was a few discussion points around AI and its use in the role, whether it's in retail design or graphic design or what have you. Now, we'll use something like Midjourney to do some really fast concepting. I have to tell you that the year in which we've been just, you know, trying it out, the advances in this as a resources have really been staggering, but it hasn't necessarily changed anything fundamentally within the process. You know, what used to be kind of mood boards, inspiration boards, what other people have done, kind of the, I can't believe I'm going to say, remember Pinterest? You know, when people used to put
Oh, man.
boards,
Yeah.
like that kind of tool is very helpful. Now, the only things I get worried about are like, you know, we're kind of just synthesizing stuff that other people have already made.
Right.
True.
Which honestly, you know, coming from an art school background, you know, appropriation is art, you know, in a lot of ways. But anyway, I digress. The AI as a tool in fast concepting or rapid concepting helps us cut down the amount of time we need to translate our strategy, visualize it, get alignment, and then do the real work with agencies. Because it really is it's just one tool that helps us communicate easier to other partners. It doesn't replace anything necessarily.
Right.
It allows the designers to go faster where there was a lot of time kind of soaked up by, you mean like this? Do you mean like this? Do you mean like this? And it'll be, nope, more this, nope, more that. And it's been beneficial that way. It's been a time saver, which to us means that we can go faster to market with concepts because we vetted through ideas at a much faster clip than we would have without it.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because just before we met with you, we were in a meeting with the rest of the team, and we were talking about just that the benefits in how everybody's using it in different ways, in the different challenges that everybody's having with different projects. But I think you're right. I think it's not something you should be afraid of. This is something. It's a new tool. It's a new tool, and it's not replacing anybody. It's not doing any of that. It's just making the ideation up front probably a lot easier, especially when somebody comes to us, a client says, hey, I need a project in 2 days. I need some ideas in 2 days. Well, those are the kind of tools that will help you get that deadline, you know, make it that deadline, because it just makes it a whole lot easier. But you still need the human behind it. I mean, at least for right now, that's how I see it. But we're using it. We're definitely using it. We're being careful how we use it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely going to be a part of the design. It's going to be in the toolbox for every designer for a long, long time going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, Adobe is building it in, right, to the core program. So it's just going to be there to streamline things that used to take a lot of time. So,
well, I mean, an example that I get, yeah, no, I think that, you know, it's I gave the team an example one day. I was kind of looking back at some building storyboards and how long it will take to do that, right? You will have to send somebody and they would say, hey, we'll give it to you in like in 3-4 days. I think now it's a whole lot quicker to design something like that. If you just want a storyboard with images and whatever you need it for, you can just probably do it in a day or less. You know, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, definitely. It's the next stage of efficient ideation, and we're being sucked into the wormhole, which is our retail space in the design world of inventing, right? But anyway, fantastic information. And Mike, thank you again so much. Jose, thank you for being on with us today to discuss all things Dick's Sporting Goods in the retail world again. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and call it here. And again, everybody else, if you want to be a part of this conversation, have any feedback for us, make sure that you let us know down in the comments, and we will see you next time on the Retail Lounge.